Thank you, Bhavani, for introducing me to the guest today. A special thanks to Madam Latika ji, Madam Chandrakanta, Professor Parameswaran, Mr. Varadarajan, and all my friends in the industry and my colleagues. Today's topic, the theme, is standards level the playing field. This is a day, rightly mentioned, a day of celebration for all standard professionals and conformity assessment practitioners world over, including all of us. October 14th is celebrated each year as the World Standards Day to pay tribute to the efforts of thousands of experts worldwide, including all of us, as I mentioned, since we function, cooperate and collaborate through our national standards body for the development of voluntary standards of the ISO, IEC and ITU. This occasion was first observed in 1970, and in each of the year, celebrations are focused with a theme which is chosen, which is of global relevance. So this theme implies that all are at par, since the standards, once decided upon, would be applicable to all players in the field equally. And this is the logo that has been finally arrived at after a global competition where many people participated and 200 applications were, 200 designs were shortlisted, and this particular design was provided by one Indonesian gentleman, a very young kid. And the reason why he chose this dice, which is having 6 at all the 4 sides, which applies, which implies perhaps that it's a fixed game. It's not so. What he felt was it should symbolize a game and symbolize equality of opportunity for multiple players, which is a 3. So that's the concept. And the World Standards Day is a celebration, as Mr. Pantulu mentioned, which is to celebrate the efforts of the professionals who work in ISO, IEC and ITU, which implies it's more than about a few lakhs of people world over, various committees, subcommittees, working groups, special expert panels, and these are all all these world standards programs are done through the national standards body primarily. Apart from the national standards body, there are many other bodies which celebrate the occasion. Like the other day, the Institution of Engineers celebrated the World Standards Day. So it's a day where it's hugely celebrated. Unfortunately, we could not celebrate it on the 14th of the October because of other reasons, administrative reasons. To have all the 3 organizations, 3 different organizations working in different fields come to an understanding, the 3 bodies formed an organization called the World Standards Cooperation in the year 2001. This was primarily to strengthen and advance the voluntary consensus-based international standard systems, and it ensures that the 3 organizations work transparently, avoid duplication and overlap of work. The 3 bodies generally meet very often with workshops to see that there are no overlaps. The ISO primarily works in the field of all subjects other than electrotechnical field. The ITU primarily deals with the telecommunication aspects, and the IEC deals with the electrotechnical areas. We should try to understand what an international standard is. International standard is a document which is established by consensus and approved by a recognized body that provides for common and repeated use The rules and guidelines and characteristics for activities or their results aimed at the achievement of optimum degree of order in a given context that is adopted by an international standardizing body and made available to the public. So the key issues here are that the subject is arrived based on consensus, a standard, and that gets approved by a recognized body, and finally it has to be adopted by an international standards organization, and it should be made available public. So that qualifies for an international standard being termed so. Why there is need for international standard is that they are instruments which enable the development of harmonized, stable and globally recognized framework for the dissemination and use of technologies, best practices and agreements which support for the overall growth of economy and the information society. Now we just have a glance on the levels of standardization, levels of standards rather. The individual standards is the rock bottom where innumerable opportunities are there to have standards in our life. Then as we work in a group, in an organization, we have company standards which one can relate with IBM standards or Ramco standards or the educational standards. And then we, of a particular college. Then we have the association standards like the ASTM standards or APA where specific industries are joined together so that there is uniformity in approach in certain areas. Then we are there in the next echelon, which is the national standards. Like we have the Japanese international standard, Japanese standards body called JIS. The British standards body is known as BSI. Likewise, DIN. Then we have regional cooperation efforts taking place world over so that there is a greater lobby and greater coherence of efforts at the international forum. And this is called the regional level of standards. The Europe, you would all be conversant that they have standards of their own known as CEN and CENELEC. CENELEC is for the electrical area and other areas are made by CEN. Then we have the Pacific Area Regional Cooperation for Standards, where we are also a member. India is a member in that. And India is promoting the development of regional standards at the SAARC area. The highest echelon is the international standards, namely the ISO, IEC and ITU. A word on what the BIS is. BIS is the National Standards Body of India, which was established as early as in 1947, and it was a registered society. Its mark is well known to all of us even now with the symbolic ISI mark. Then in the year 1986, government decided that BIS has a bigger role in seeing that the national plans get implemented, and the thrust of national efforts is more. And so, through a BIS Act 1986, ISI was converted to BIS, so that the development activities of standardization, marking, and quality certification of goods and matters connected with those issues in the country. Now, this in short tells us the various ways we impinge on you. One, we develop primarily, our main area of work is to develop national standards. About 17,000 standards and above have already been developed on diverse areas. Then these standards are implemented informally and formally and through certification schemes, and we operate the certification scheme. And there are about 28,000 licensees throughout the world, throughout the country, and there are countries which are having the ISI mark in other countries also through the foreign certification scheme. Then every one of us would be very knowing about the hallmark jewelry. This symbol has and this activity has really overshadowed our primary activity, which is the ISI mark. We have recognized many laboratories to supplement our certification activity. About 100 laboratories are there throughout the country, which support primarily our certification activity. And then we have recognized assaying and hallmarking centers, about 300 odd bodies are there, where the jewelry which are meant for hallmarking are brought to the centers and they are assayed and hallmarked. Then the Bureau of Indian Standards also operates the management system certification, and quite a number of licenses of governmental area and sensitive areas are certified by the BIS. Then we have also a platform for recognizing organizations of excellence through the Rajiv Gandhi National Quality Awards. This area is something which is equivalent or on the same lines we have devised as the Malcolm Baldrige Award or the European Quality Award or Juran Award. And many organizations compete yearly and show their excellence of performance in respect to not only the product area but also social responsibility, environmental concerns, etc. Now we also have a presence at the global level for the benefit of the country. BIS is a direct member of the ISO, and we are a member of the TMB quite often. And right now we are members of the TMB for 3 years. And in addition, we also hold secretariat of 8 committees. We are also a member of 348 technical committees as a participating member, where we have a higher role in the sense we have a ballot right. We can have a say in the course of the development of the standard. And there are about 278 areas where we are observer members, where we don't have the rights to vote, but we can always get the documents and react to them. Our presence in IEC is not as significant as in ISO, and it is in the interest of our country to be more active in the area of IEC also. Then we do have regional cooperation with, as I mentioned, PASC. We are a member there, where countries like the North American countries, the South American countries, Japan, China, and India, we actively engage ourselves so that we have areas of common support in the ISO forum and the IEC forum. Then we are also one of the active members of the IPSA, India, Brazil, South Africa forum, where we are trying to harmonize the areas of standards and also conformity assessment procedures. BIS is very actively engaged in seeing that the SAARC forum takes off in a strong manner, because the areas of SAARC countries, most of our areas of our subjects are neglected, not accepted at the ISO forum. So unless we have countries of similar position taking up such issues in the ISO forum, our dent in the international arena would be limited. Then we are the national inquiry point for standards, technical regulations, and conformity assessment procedures. Now this means that basically any country, when it is intending to develop a standard or intending to develop a technical regulation, it has to be made available to all the member countries of the WTO for a limited period. During that period, we have the rights to examine the document and raise issues of concern to our country if they are technical barriers. And the member country which has developed those technical regulations, it is their duty to see that those are addressed. For the interest of bilateral cooperation with various countries where there is trade importance, we have attempted the cooperation with 19 NSBs, which are very significant. Like we have an MOU with USA, Germany, France, Israel, Greece, and also our neighbors like Bangladesh, Bhutan, Afghanistan, and we have MRA with Pakistan and Sri Lanka on the conformity assessment procedures. So this is a forum which can help the industry at large. Wherever they are exporting products or importing products, we can harmonize the standards if there are differences. And then it also is a forum for you to take on for the conformity assessment areas. Now in the present context, global economies, we'll all agree they are highly interdependent. Global products are the order of the day and not local products. The call of the Prime Minister, namely the Make in India, is a very challenging one for the Indian industry. Indian industry would now have to compete with the best. We cannot be going under the garb of protection anymore. Value addition and processing of products take place at multiple global locations. And the government's aim is to see that the consumer interests and protection of consumer would be the prime area. And to this, we would definitely be looking forward to, or we'll be seeing these days where there will be tighter domestic regulations so as to ensure safe and quality products being available from not only the local products, local producers, but also the other countries. There is always a complaint from many manufacturers that we are dumping steel which doesn't conform to the standards or similar issues. So tighter domestic regulations would be the only way where we would be giving each industry equal footing. And so the consumer would be protected. Now for levelness of playing field, what are the essential things as far as our area of work is concerned? Is standards are to be transparent. Standards are to be applicable to all. Conformity assessment processes are to be transparent and applicable to all. Similarly, the trade's rules and regulations are to be transparent and applicable to all. Only in such a scenario would there be a levelness of playing field. Now, all the three areas, the commonality is only the standards. It is a standard against which conformity assessment process is operated, and it is a standard which is referred in the regulations. So let us see the way the standards process are developed. It is through a technical committee structure which comprises of manufacturers, consumers, government departments on a balanced manner. No single stakeholder predominate, and the decisions are through consensus approach. Now this is in short the way the process of development of a standard takes place. A new work item comes, which are examined by experts, which gets translated into a preliminary draft, gets circulated among the committee members. It gets further refined to see that all the test methods and applicable parameters, requirements are taken care of. It goes into circulation widely among all interests for a period of about 3 months, where further inputs come, they get deliberated in the meetings, and then it gets approved as a national standard, adopted by the Divisional Council. Now when the committees function, for all the subjects, there has to be inputs, and the vital input is the technical requirements. For this, we depend upon expert information, or companies come forward to provide their own information. There would be purchase information which are used by consumers, major consuming organizations. A group of experts contribute towards the information base. Standards of other countries are also a vital input, but the most important area where we depend, or any country for that matter depends, is international standards. The reason why international standards are preferred is because it gives a platform for globalization efforts. The consumer demand for globally benchmarked products that are proven quality, safe and environmental friendly is the order of the day now. International solutions to problems are available when you go in for international standards. You get a platform of the new technologies available, and the WTO TBT agreement also gives you a path towards the international standards. And when you adopt your national standards on the basis of international standards, then you are in a position to see that there is regional economic cooperation in a smoother manner. So thus, it is supportive of sustainable global development. The provisions of the WTO TBT reads like this. Clause 2.4 of the agreement says, where technical regulations are required and relevant international exist, or their completion is imminent, members shall use them or the relevant parts of them as the basis for their technical regulations, except when such international standards or relevant parts would not be effective or inappropriate means for the fulfillment of legitimate objectives pursued, for instance, because of fundamental climatic or geographical factors or fundamental technological problems. So, except for these reasons, any country would have to go in for adopting the international standards or parts thereof. Complying to WTO TBT requirement by adopting the international standards would be the most sensible thing to do, because of transparency, openness, impartiality, consensus of approach, effectiveness and relevance. There's no overlap, and the development dimension is there because members are provided funds to participate in the forum. Now the question is there really a level playing field at all? In the real competitive world, can we get what we expect? We all know one day in the past we were masters in the game of hockey. Those days we were playing in grass, and we made all the other countries also play in grass, and we were masters, so we were winning all the world medals, etc. But then we were not part of the decision-making group of the Games Federation, etc., which changed the pitch to synthetic surfaces. They made their players get conversant with the pitch, and then they made that as an order of the day. And now we are no more even second or third in the game of hockey. Similarly, in cricket, we all know the match curator of the home side would be the one who decides the type of pitch, which has a very crucial bearing on the outcome of the match, irrespective of whether you win the toss. So basically the fate of the game is decided well before the pitch is laid. Standards and conformity processes are just end results of serious power play. If closely studied, standards and conformity assessment processes have a high degree of skew, and this skew is reflective on the degree of participation. The more you participate, the more active you are, the bigger delegation that you have in the ISO forum, those standards will be aligned to those countries. And this is natural, because unless you are present, you can't defend your requirements. To ensure that the playing field is really level, it is necessary to be part of the standards and conformity assessment processes. There are basically three types which are very crucial areas. One is the product standards per se, and then you have the test methods and the certification process. Of the three, I consider that the test methods is most crucial, because it is the test methods which govern the determination of the parameters. And nowadays there is an aspect of how much more recognized you are as a laboratory for estimation of certain parameters. As far as India is concerned, with respect to test methods, we have been merely followers rather than trendsetters. It is the Western world that develops the test methods. They develop the test equipment, which then they get incorporated into international standards. Now, because the Western world develops the test methods, they are ahead of us in equipping themselves with the test laboratories, and our laboratories are not highly recognized, even though we get the NABL accreditation, etc. I had a personal experience as far as the areas where international standards work. There are areas there are times when we are forced to be followers, but my experience has helped in making me feel confident that we can make things change. I was initially the secretary of ISO TC 120 leather during 1983 to 1987. At that time, we were having the entire scope of leather with us, and the standard atmospheric condition which is relevant to India and those conditions which are relevant to European countries and North American countries were part of the standards or on leather. Then, due to administrative reasons, I had to move out from my activity, and then I came back in 2005. When I came at that point of time, a lot of things had changed. The scope of the test methods had been removed from the committee, and it was given to an European body on standards development. So, as a result, we were not in a position to proceed further in the development of technical standards, technical specifications, because the moment we develop a parameter, they would tell of a test method which they are more conversant rather than us. Then they conveniently removed the standard atmospheric conditions which is relevant to the tropical countries. So at that point of time, the chairman of the national committee was Dr. T. Ramsamy, who is presently the secretary for Department of Science and Technology. He said, it's a lost ground, we can't do anything, we can't achieve, let's just concentrate on what task we have before us. But I thought we are working against the interest of our country in case we have to just follow what the others force. So we started the effort of mobilizing the national views on the subject. We got a lot of support. Then subsequently, we lobbied with other neighboring countries and other countries which are of tropical area. And then we succeeded. Gradually we succeeded. And within a matter of 5 years, whatever the standard atmospheric condition deleted was brought back. And we are now in a comfortable position. This was with respect to the leather for which we had the secretariat. Then later I was the member of the ISO TC 207, which is on environmental management. And when I entered, at that point of time, the hottest topic was the carbon footprint. The carbon footprint was a document, standard which the European countries were badly keen to develop it, so that they can develop regulations keeping in view the higher carbon footprint products should be, so that they can be discriminated or they can be lesser preference for products, and then there would be carbon taxes. All these talks were around. When we found that the whole subject of carbon footprint was to be based on life cycle studies, and we started going through the subject in detail, we found that many of these steps that are very essential for a genuine carbon footprint standard to be done was conveniently ignored. Then we also had enough data to say that whatever carbon footprint figure that you get as a result of the standard that they were trying to develop, the uncertainty factor would have been as high as about 300 to 400%. We put our foot down and we raised our voice. We had a lot of opposition. But then we had a lot of countries gradually coming to our fold. At one point of time, USA, UK, Canada, Germany, they were all rallying around us to see that the standard doesn't become an international standard. And finally, we have seen to it that it has become only a technical specification. So it is possible for us to mobilize and stand for our principles. There are huge advantages for India to be participating in the ISO and IEC work. India can propose international standards of subjects of Indian interest. which can be Indian standards per se, which we have about 17,000 standards, can become basis for international standards. Barriers to the international trade, Indian trade, can be foreseen, and we can thwart it at the beginning itself. Indian industry can be aware of the trends that are taking place at the international level. We would have to be active at the proposal stage itself. At the draft stages also, we have a tendency of being despondent. We don't react to the drafts when they are provided, and that is some aspect that we'll have to look into. And we can still comment on those published IAC standards, and our comments would definitely be taken care of. And as I mentioned, we should be in high strengths in all the meetings, because the international meetings take place with a lot of breakaway groups. Unless our delegation is in big size, we can't be participating in each of the subgroups and breakaway groups. With these few words, rather not few words, large number of words, I wish to thank Madam Latika ji, Professor Parameshwaran, Madam Chandrakanta, Sri Vardarajan for giving the concurrence to be part of today's celebrations. Before leaving, I wish to play an interesting video. I got this message through WhatsApp from one of my colleagues at Delhi. So thank you.